Welcome back, everyone, for our daily deep dive into today's top climate, environment, and energy news.
Yeah, we've got a pretty loaded lineup today.
We really do. Let's kick things off with, well, the Trump administration, they're making some waves again with environmental policy.
Yeah, seems like they're always stirring things up, right?
It's never a dull moment, that's for sure. So they've decided to halt work on stronger building codes for disaster preparedness. What's the thinking there?
Well, on the surface, it seems like a move to reduce regulations, maybe cut some red tape, but the timing is a little concerning, don't you think?
Yeah, especially with climate change, making extreme weather events more frequent and intense. Shouldn't we be making buildings more resilient, not less?
Exactly. Critics are arguing that this could put communities at greater risk, especially in hurricane and earthquake zones. Those updated codes were supposed to help buildings withstand those stronger winds and tremors we're seeing.
So potentially more damage, more rebuilding costs in the long run. It's a bit like trying to save pennies now, but risking dollars later.
And who ends up footing those bills? Often it's the taxpayers, right?
It all comes back around. And then there's the EPA funding situation, kind of a mixed bag there, right?
Yeah, some funds are being unfrozen, but others are being cut, so it's hard to say what the overall impact will be until we see which programs are being prioritized and which are getting the axe.
Definitely a wait-and-see situation, but those FEMA firings, hundreds of employees let go, that's got people worried.
It's a huge concern. FEMA plays such a vital role in disaster response. They help communities get back on their feet after hurricanes, floods, wildfires, you name it.
And they're losing staff in key areas, recovery grants, flood insurance, climate resilience programs. I mean, these are all crucial for communities, especially those in rural areas and on tribal lands who often rely heavily on FEMA support.
Exactly. These communities are already facing unique challenges when it comes to disaster preparedness and recovery, and this could make things even tougher for them.
So from national concerns to global ones, there's growing pressure on wealthy nations to step up their climate commitments.
Yeah, developing countries are really leading this charge. They're saying, hey, you industrialized nations, you've contributed the most to this problem historically, so you need to step up and provide more financial aid and support to help us adapt to climate change and transition to cleaner energy.
And with COP30 coming up in Brazil, the stakes are even higher. I imagine the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Agreement under Trump isn't helping matters.
It's definitely cast a shadow over U.S. credibility on climate action on the global stage, makes it harder to build trust and reach consensus when one of the biggest emitters isn't fully on board.
Global challenges need global solutions, but it seems like we're taking steps back instead of forward. Sometimes, meanwhile, scientists are sounding the alarm bells about melting glaciers.
Yeah, it's happening faster than predicted, and the consequences are far-reaching rising sea levels, threatening coastal communities, freshwater resources, dwindling in regions that depend on glacial meltwater. The impacts are going to be felt worldwide.
It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our planet's systems really are. One change triggers a domino effect. And speaking of global solutions, there's talk of a global tax on shipping emissions.
It's an idea that's gaining traction. Aim is to reduce the shipping industry's carbon footprint by making it more expensive to pollute and then use the revenue to invest in cleaner technologies and infrastructure for the sector.
Sounds promising, but I've heard there's pushback from some large emerging economies.
Yeah, they're arguing that this tax would disproportionately burden their economies, potentially hindering their development and making it harder for them to compete in global trade. They believe developed nations should bear a greater share of the responsibility.
It's a tough situation trying to balance the urgent need for climate action with concerns about economic fairness and equity.
Definitely a complex debate with no easy answers.
It feels like we're at a crossroads with all these competing interests and priorities.
We are, and the choices we make today will have lasting consequences for generations to come. Yeah, it really underscores the need to find solutions that address both the climate crisis and economic development in a way that's fair to all nations.
It's a tall order for sure. But speaking of tough challenges, let's shift our focus to Brazil. They're pushing for new oil drilling in the Amazon, a move that's sparking a lot of debate.
Yeah, it's a controversial decision to say. The least environmental groups are really up in arms about it. They're warning that drilling could have devastating consequences for the rainforest.
The Amazon is often called the lungs of the planet, right, because of its vital role in absorbing carbon dioxide.
Exactly, and it's home to an incredible amount of biodiversity. Drilling could lead to deforestation, habitat loss, oil spills. I mean, the risks are huge.
And let's not forget the indigenous communities who live in the Amazon. Their livelihoods and cultures are deeply connected to the rainforest.
Absolutely. Drilling could displace communities, disrupt their traditional ways of life. It's a situation where economic interests are clashing with environmental and social concerns.
And it's all happening as Brazil prepares to host COP30, the big UN climate summit. Talk about being in the spotlight.
The pressure is definitely on Brazil to reconcile their economic goals with their environmental commitments. They'll need to show real leadership if they want to maintain their credibility on the global stage.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. Shifting gears back to the U.S., we've been talking about policy and politics. But there's another crucial element at play here, public trust in science.
That's a big one. If people don't trust the science behind climate change, it's hard to get them on board with the solutions.
And it feels like we're living in an era where facts are constantly being challenged and misinformation spreads like wildfire.
Social media and political polarization definitely play a role. It's created this echo chamber effect where people are only exposed to information that reinforces their existing beliefs.
So how do we break out of that? How do we rebuild trust in science and ensure that decisions are based on facts, not fiction?
Well, it starts with scientists doing a better job of communicating their findings in a clear and engaging way, not just to other scientists, but to the public.
And policymakers need to show that they're listening to the science and basing their decisions on evidence, not ideology.
Exactly. And we all need to develop better media literacy skills so we can critically evaluate the information we're bombarded with every day.
It's about education empowerment, giving people the tools to discern fact from fiction and to hold their leaders accountable.
Absolutely. It's a long road, but it's essential if we want to build a future where science guides our actions on climate change.
Speaking of the future, there's some interesting news about sea turtles. We were talking earlier about how rising temperatures are skewing the sex ratio towards females, but now there's evidence that some turtles might be adapting.
Yeah, it seems like some species are nesting earlier in the season when temperatures are cooler, which could help balance out the sex ratio of their offspring.
So nature finds a way even in the face of these daunting challenges. It's kind of reassuring in a way. It gives you a little bit of hope, right, that nature is pretty incredible.
It really is. It's a reminder that even in the face of climate change, there's still this remarkable ability to adapt and persist.
It's a good lesson for us too, right? Adaptability and resilience. Those are key in a changing world.
Absolutely. We can learn a lot from nature in that regard.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From political battles and policy decisions to global summits and scientific breakthroughs.
It's been a whirlwind of information.
It has, but it's important to stay informed, to understand the challenges we're facing, and to explore the potential solutions.
Knowledge is power, right?
Exactly, and we hope this deep dive has empowered you to think critically about the complex issues surrounding climate change, the environment, and energy.
We've seen how interconnected these issues are, how decisions made in one part of the world can have ripple effects across the globe.
And we've seen how science plays a crucial role in understanding these challenges and finding ways to address them.
But it's not just about science, it's about people too, about building trust, fostering collaboration, and finding common ground.
We all have a role to play in shaping a more sustainable future.
Absolutely. Every action we take, every choice we make can contribute to a healthier planet.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions because the future is in our hands.
That's right. The conversation doesn't end here.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the news. We'll be back tomorrow with more insights and analysis. Until then, take care.